and what it might mean. Our team very quickly after the Lion Air accident assembled with the regulators. We evaluated the data from the accident. We saw that MCAS was involved, and so we began to take quick action immediately. It doesn't have to do with that email. That's not relevant to that discussion. Our team was immediately identifying that.
Which is exactly my point. The fact that it took another tragedy to actually ground the airplane so you could actually have a true a fix that worked is, I think, really what's on the table here. And the diagnosis is why didn't we react? Why didn't we ground that aircraft a lot sooner so that another tragedy wouldn't happen?
Senator, we have asked that question over and over, and you know, if we knew everything back then that we know now, we would have made a different decision. The decision that was made on that at that point with the data we had, we quickly convened a safety review board. The FAA, coming out of that, confirmed the continuing airworthiness of the airplane and issued that officially. That was the safety case that was built. But Senator, as you point out, we've learned from the second accident, and if we could go back, we would have made a different decision. And we have learned. We are making those improvements to MCAS, and that's where our focus is going forward.
Well, Boeing is an important company. It's important for our economy. I want to see you get this right, but you have to properly diagnose this. You have to accept responsibility for what happened, so we actually can make those changes, both within Boeing, also within the FAA. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, and I want to thank all the families that are here today who have lost their most precious loved ones. Their deaths should not be in vain, and we all have to do every bit of our part together to make sure that we prevent future tragedies from happening. And in order to honor the memories of these 346 souls and the empty chairs that they will leave behind this Thanksgiving and Christmas and on and on and on. And so you said additional information wasn't available. I want to touch a little bit on MCAS and Brazil. According to news reports, when the Brazilian National Civil Aviation Agency came to the U.S. in 2017 to test out the MAX 8, they determined that changes made to the old 737 were significant enough that they needed much more information from Boeing and were going to provide it for their pilots. When they eventually published their pilot training requirements, they were therefore able to flag the MCAS as one of the changes pilots needed to take into consideration when flying the MAX 8. And yet, for United States pilots, MCAS wasn't mentioned in their manual. So, Mr. Muilenburg, why was this information not flagged for your other customers who had 737 MAXs in their fleet? Did you prevent your company from sharing these differences to other regulatory bodies or operators? I have here the Brazilian manual. They decided their pilots should learn this, and why wouldn't you provide it to the United States pilots?
Senator, I can't comment on the details of the Brazilian document. John may be able to, but let me more broadly make the point that that's exactly how the process is supposed to work. We provide information. We evaluate with the regulators in the various jurisdictions what should be included in the training. We have no desire to hide features of the airplane that pilots need to know about.
They reported back to you, and it was significant enough for them.
Oh yeah, I got it
to see their
back.
manual.
They gave it back.
Then why wouldn't you consider that it was a significant change?
Yeah, and Senator, I understand your point, and that was a decision that was made in Brazil. Again, I'm not familiar with the details of that one, but the discussion.
Let me just ask you this question then. Moving forward, will you commit to making it a practice when other countries are clearly paying attention enough to make significant changes to their pilot manuals based on major operational changes, that Boeing will send these notifications of changes to the other users of these aircraft, so at least they have the opportunity to train their pilots? You denied them the opportunities.
Senator, we are committed to sharing that information, and that's part of our international collaboration. But I also want to note again that the discussion around MCAS training and whether it would be included in the training manuals, that was an active, iterative discussion with the FAA. and it was a decision made based on safety. Again, we try to put information in the training manuals that focuses on the effects of failures and things that will be valuable to the pilots. And it's not always the case that more information adds to safety, although in this case, we understand this, and this is one of the additions going forward.
Brazil thought it added to their safety. But I want to touch a little bit on Senator Fisher, the question that she raised earlier.
Dialogue.
All these changes have taken place, of course, over the years, and this plane is still working off its original certification from 1967.
That's old.
This is despite the fact that pilots have told me that the MAX 8 is in no way functionally similar to the original 737s that took to the skies 52 years ago. Like I said in the last hearing that we had, it seems to me like there have been so many significant modifications, it's almost as if you took a canoe and turned it into a cruise ship. So, Mr. Hamilton, can you tell us how many derivative certificates Boeing has received for the 737 since initially being certified over 50 years ago?
Senator, I don't have the exact number in my head. It's approximately 14. But as
14 or 814? I'm sorry.
14 derivatives.
14.
Yeah, but let me.
814 what?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And the last thing I'm going to ask, do you
Fuck
believe
has
that the
air.
737 MAX is functionally the same plane that was certified in 1967?
Senator, as I mentioned to the earlier senator, safety standards have evolved as the airplane has evolved. And one of the important things I think to understand is what's really important also is for the pilots as they transition from the earlier version of the 737 to the newer version, that the airplane behaves and handles in the same way. That was important from a handling characteristic standpoint. And
Important enough for Brazil to mention, but not for us.
with respect to that, Senator, so there is a joint operation evaluation board that is training, but other regulators can determine what training they want to do above and beyond based on their information. I don't know the specifics of the Brazilian document you're referencing. We can follow up on that.
Thank you, Senator Rosen. Senator Blunt.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Muilenburg, I don't want to absolve you from both the opportunity and the responsibility to go back and look at that long question from Senator Tester and answer it for the record. But for now, one of the central thoughts in that question was, why shouldn't we change this process and go back to where it's no longer cooperative, where the FAA takes full responsibility? Give me the answer to that. Should this process be changed where the federal government is fully responsible with employees only hired by the federal government? What impact would that have on safety, do you think?
Senator, I believe the data clearly shows that creation of the delegated authority process and its implementation has enhanced safety over the last couple of decades. I mentioned earlier about a 95% improvement in aviation safety over the last couple of decades. I think a portion of that at least can be attributed to the delegated authority process. That doesn't mean we shouldn't refine it, reform it over time, but the fundamental process of strong government oversight combined with deep industry technical knowledge in the right balance is a strong safety process. And I firmly believe that's one of the things that's contributed to aviation safety. And that process demands oversight, and we are fully supportive of strong oversight, but we also fully support the idea of tapping deep industry technical expertise, and that combination is the safest combination.
And what do you think the view of the industry technicians is of their responsibility there? Do you think they feel the right level of both responsibility and liability of providing the information that they need to provide?
Senator, they do. And I can tell you that's the culture of our company. And I respect the comments that were made today and the questions that have been raised about our culture.
How do I
We
get
deserve the scrutiny. But I've been at this company for 34 years. I know the people of Boeing. You all know the people of Boeing. These are 150,000 people
Oh shit, it's in the toilet.
that every day come to work because they have an important mission. They are honest. They are resolute in their efforts. They are committed to safety. That's our culture. And every employee at Boeing, that's just how we think about the work we do. And we're going to continue to improve as a company. I'm not saying we've done everything right. As I've noted today, we've gotten some things wrong. But this is a great company with a great legacy that's committed to excellence. And where we can improve, we will. Where we can learn, we will. But our culture is about safety. That is at the very core of Boeing. It's been that way for 103 years.
All right, Mr. Hamilton, on the, I had 2 or 3 questions that actually Senator Rosen just asked, pursuing that further. But, you've got a 1967 certification that's had 14 variants since 1967. You have a
Who's this? That was incredible.
significantly different plane, just based on the 14th variant of the original plane. What difference do you think would have made if the certification process would have gone back to we're certifying a new plane? Would that have made a difference in the MCAS system, or you've been doing this a long time? What difference would it have made if we hadn't built on the previous half century of this plane's history and just have started with a new plane? Would that have been better or worse?
In Part 21 of the federal regulations, it spells out the changed product rule, which is how you assess for a derivative type certification. And it's a process that's in the USFA's regulations. It's also in European and other countries' regulations. And it requires you to look at all significant changes and step up. I think there's an assumption here that a derivative type cert is less robust than a new type cert. I think when you look at a new type cert, you oftentimes have some exceptions
Team
or
member
equivocal
busy.
safety, very similar to what you see on a derivative. So I'm not sure it would have necessarily resulted
Never seen
in
that before.
a safer airplane. It might have driven some different design decisions, though. But fundamentally, one of the things that happened in these 2 accidents was this assumption around how we expect crews to respond under certain situations, which proved to be it did not happen. And I think that's a fundamental issue that we have to address as an industry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blunt. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today and for taking our questions. I will tell you this, as you've responded, you've addressed senator. I think you should be addressing victims, because
Damn, yeah.
they're the ones we're asking questions on behalf of. And they're the ones who have come today on behalf of their family members. Another thing I want to ask you, you've mentioned a couple of times a lack of awareness of emails or documents or communications. And, Mr. Muilenburg, we have something around here before we vote. We say we read the bill
Well, I missed
so
some
that we know
bricks.
what's in it. And if we need to ask questions, we ask questions.
I missed some of the
And
bricks.
we
What?
develop that awareness that is so necessary to make good decisions and to have a full view
What? How
of
did I
the
miss them?
situation that is in front of us. And it is disconcerting
Didn't even get
to
them.
hear
What?
someone who's to be the leader of a company to say, I wasn't aware, or I didn't know, or hadn't read that, nobody made me aware of that, I depended on that. We call that passing the buck, and it is your responsibility, if you're going to lead the company, to have that awareness. So have you, at this point, read each and every page of every document that is relative to this situation in this case?
Senator, I can't say I've read every document, every page. I know we've provided more than 500,000 pages of documents as part of the production process over the last year.
Yeah, we know.
I accept your input and your criticism. I am accountable, our company's accountable. Accountability starts
I
with me.
appreciate that, but I think that it is unsettling
Oh,
to
wait.
hear you say, I haven't read that. Let me move on. I do
Fucking
believe
missed.
you're in the business of safety as a priority. And even though you say you don't sell safety, let's talk a little bit about the simulators, because you had pilots that were training in the simulators as well as training in flight, correct?
You're referring during the MAX development,
Yes.
Senator? Yes.
Yes. Okay, so the simulators that were being used for training, were they built by the same engineers with the same components, the same sensors, the same systems as the MAX system?
Senator, we have a wide variety of simulators, some of which are what we call conformed simulators, which represent the actual hardware and software of the airplane. We have others that are engineering
So it is conceivable
simulators.
that some of the pilots were not training on this specific simulator. And then you also, you know, Mr. Peters had started down a line of questioning with you about the pilots and the pilots that were trained, and you only had highly experienced pilots in simulators before flying the new MAX system, correct?
Senator, I was referring to our Boeing test pilots. We also have pilots from a number of other organizations, regulators, and
Why
airlines.
would you not use pilots with a variety of experience, a wide range of experience? Because there are pilots with a wide range of experience that are going to be in that cockpit, flying that plane in real time.
Where's the ramp for that thing?
Senator, I agree with your view on the necessity of having a variety of pilot experiences involved in the testing process. But again, our Boeing pilots are not the only testers in the process.
Okay, well then let's take it this way. What changes are you going to make in the simulators and in the training that is going to bring to account for human factor?
Senator, we've made several changes and have more to come, but to start, the baseline training program for the MAX is roughly a 24-day training program, which includes heavy use of simulators, advanced simulators. We've also modified the computer-based training for the incremental training between the NG and the MAX. We've added visibility to the training materials for the MCAS system that we've talked about. That new training is all currently being evaluated and will be ultimately certified by the regulators to make it a baseline in the program. We're also investing R&D significantly in advanced
Let
simulations.
me ask you this. I appreciate all of that and appreciate your answer. Prior to these occurrences, did you feel that your training was not sufficient?
Senator, no, we implemented the training that was planned and certified for the airplane.
Okay, yield back.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Senator Scott.
Fuck. How do you get that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, my heart goes out to all the families. I just can't imagine,
Skip it.
the impact on these families after these tragic accidents. Florida, I come from Florida, so air travel is pretty big deal for us. 126 million people traveled to Florida's tourists last year, and a lion's share of them came by aircraft.
even
So
do
the
it.
safety of everybody is really important. Mr. Muilenburg, the president and CEO of your commercial airlines was let go after this. What's your process to hold people accountable to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Senator, first of all, my company and I are accountable. I believe that accountability
everyone
starts
there?
with me. My board took some recent actions regarding my position, which I fully support, and will allow me to focus even more on safety. So every action we take is try to focus on safety. I have also taken some management actions. Again, those are focused on operational excellence and safety going forward. As other reviews are completed, If we see additional actions that need to be taken, we won't hesitate. But in some cases, accountability also includes improvements to our processes and our organization structure. And that gets to some of the changes we announced on our safety review boards, our new safety organization, our new board safety committee, and the realignment of all 50,000 of our engineers to our chief engineer in terms of reporting structure. All of those accountability actions are important, and all of them are focused on safety.
So if any of your, whether it's engineers or non-engineers, if somebody has a concern in the future about safety, what's the process you've created to make sure that it gets to you and you can react to it? Because ultimately, if you, as a CEO, the buck stops with you.
Yeah. Senator, that's been one of the key learnings from this whole process is we need to elevate the visibility on safety issues that might come up at the ground floor level to make sure they get the right visibility and action. So a couple of things we've done there. One is, again, restructuring our safety review boards. So I now get a weekly update on safety review boards from across the Boeing enterprise at a detailed level, which I found to be very helpful. We've also, with the stand-up of our new safety organization under Beth Pastor, instead of having those safety teams underneath our businesses, they're now separated and report up through our chief engineer. Any safety concerns that employees have will come through that organization. We've set up a new anonymous reporting system for those employees that might want to make anonymous reports to facilitate that. And we continue to have a full range of ethics hotlines across our enterprise that encourage employees to make their inputs. And we have a culture of asking our employees to speak up. We want them to speak up. We want to make sure they're heard and that we take action. In this entire process, one of the things we did is now about 6 months ago, I asked our board to set up a independent review led by Admiral Giambastiani. He has tremendous safety background. That committee came forward with a number of recommendations, some of which I mentioned in things that we've implemented. Our board will continue to be engaged in that process, and this new safety organization that I talked about, in addition to reporting to the chief engineer and to me, it also provides independent audit, if you will, back into our board. And our board has set up a new aerospace safety committee that's now permanent, headed up by Admiral Giambastiani. As you might have seen on Friday, we added another board member, Admiral Richardson, who also has deep experience in safety. He will also be a member of that committee. And so our safety organization will have an independent reporting line to them as well, which I think is a good discipline process.
I didn't preside, so I didn't get to hear all the testimony. But have you made any recommendations to this committee on things that at the federal level we ought to be doing differently to make sure whether it's Boeing or Airbus or anybody else this doesn't happen again?
Senator, we've discussed a number of options there. Again, we have learned, and there are some things that we need to fix that are related to the airplane design and training and communications. We also think there are some opportunities to reform our processes and how we work together as a government and industry. And we're very
That mic, oh my God.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and
My God, it's so
I also
stupid.
want to express my sympathies and condolences to the
Oh my God.
family members here.
Why is it so distorted?
We have a safe commercial aviation industry in America. but
Where's
I
my last
always have
mini-kit?
ways to improve it. Industry, airlines, FAA, Congress. So I'm sure it's difficult for the family members to be here, but it's important.
Where's the last mini-kit? I don't have it.
I'm going to start with just a bit of a kind of a parochial question. Mr. Muilenburg, Mr. Hamilton, Alaska Airlines is my state's airline. It's a very good airline. It's certainly critically important to my state. I know it is to the ranking member's state as well. They fly almost all 737 Boeings. Alaskans travel a lot. I've had many constituents in the aftermath of these MAX crashes that have asked me, are the 737s that we are flying on all the
Oh,
time
you have to shoot those
Alaska
things. What?
to and from
How's I supposed to know that?
safe. So can you can both of you assure my constituents that these 737s are safe, that are such an important component of the Alaska air travel?
Senator, the 737 NG fleet that Alaska operates is a safe fleet. It's a safe airplane. And it's got about 200 million hours of air safety track record behind it.
Mr. Hamilton?
I agree with Mr. Muilenburg's comments. I also just want to state that we have a weekly meeting that we review all the reports that are coming in from the fleet on whether or not they are a potential safety issue or not.
So the MAX issues that we're focused on here with regard to 737s are not issues that exist with your other line of 737s, 800s, 900s?
No.
That's correct.
Let me ask, and I know the House side is looking at this issue as we focus, as this committee is, on the tragic lessons learned from the MAX
How do you shoot this?
737 accidents. Should we also take the time to ensure that the other 737 models that are receiving
How do you
less
shoot?
attention now are nevertheless continue to be safe, and to take the opportunity to look at the FAA
How do you shoot this
certification
fucking
process
gun?
on those, and make sure that that is not bedeviled with some of the challenges that we are discussing here with regard to the MAX? Would you agree that that's an opportunity to not just focus on the MAX, but the overall process to reboot the focus, both at your company but also in the FAA, on safety?
Senator, I believe there are a number of independent reviews underway right now looking at that broader certification process. Some of which have begun to report out. We support that broader look.
So, models that aren't just the MAX?
All models. So we are taking an end-to-end comprehensive look at the certification process, and I believe there are a number of government independent reviews that are focused on that.
Let me ask for both of you. I keep hearing from safety experts about the importance of what they refer to as functional safety, and that is the way that different systems work together with the operator, as opposed to looking at each system as it's added to a new model in a vacuum. And it seems to me that this issue of functional safety is a core issue as it relates to the MAX, given what has happened. Can you tell the committee about what your company's approach to this issue of functional safety is, adding new systems to an existing aircraft like the 737? Obviously, there was a failure here on that issue. How are you working to improve that?
How was I supposed to know that?
FAA do enough?
How was I supposed to know that?
Focus on this
Seriously.
idea of functional safety, not just the individual additions to existing and older models.
I'll ask John to take that question.
So, Senator, I think it starts with
Why can't I just
requirements
restart the level?
breakdown of what's our airplane level requirements, system level requirements, component level requirements, and then validating at the component level, the system level, and at the airplane level how any change met the requirements and interacted across at the system or airplane level. You also talked about regulatory requirements.
Yes.
There's something called
Does the FAA focus enough on, you think, on functional safety?
So there's been some rather recent changes in what we call development assurance that I think is continuing to mature, and again, this looks at the functional safety and some of the
that's the
really
one that
focused at
shoots.
it, the breakdown of requirements and how different systems interact with that. So I think, as Mr. Muilenburg pointed out, some of the recent industry committee reports discussed this, and I think we will support those recommendations and the FAA's actions going forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I didn't get it.
Sullivan, and thank you to the panel.
Again, how many times am I going to do this mission?
We'll be questioning you
Oh, I did get it
further
all.
as we continue to get
So
more
stupid.
reports. Our second panel of witnesses will be escorted in now. We thank you two gentlemen for being with us. The second panel, as I've said before, is Mr. Robert Sumwalt, Chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board, and the Honorable Christopher Hart. Mr. Hart is the team chair of the Joint Authorities Technical Review,
I hate this mission, by the way.
which we use the shorthand of JATTR for, and I've referred that to that a number of times during this hearing. And Mr. Hart is a former chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board, and they've been waiting patiently during these 2.5 hours. So, gentlemen, we appreciate you being here. You have submitted testimony. We ask each of you to summarize your testimony in 5 minutes. Mr. Sumwalt will begin with you. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Chairman Wicker, Ranking Member Cantwell, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. This afternoon, I will address the NTSB's recent recommendation report regarding the 737 MAX certification processes. This recommendation report, issued last month, contained 7 recommendations to
Keep
the
your
FAA.
mic on, Mr. Sumwalt.
It's on,
Some bikes on.
but I'll move closer. These recommendations are the result of the NTSB's involvement as an accredited representative to the Indonesian government's investigation into last year's Lion Air crash and to the Ethiopian government's investigation into this year's crash involving the Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 737 MAX. The NTSB participates in foreign investigations in accordance with ICAO Annex 13, which details the standards and recommended practices of international aviation accident investigations. Under Annex 13, the state of occurrence leads the investigation, and the U.S. has the right to participate in the investigation when it involves a U.S. manufactured or U.S. registered or designed aircraft, such as the 737 MAX 8. This is so that any design or manufacturing issues can promptly be addressed by the FAA and the manufacturer. As an accredited representative to these crash investigations, the NTSB initiated an in-depth examination of the U.S. design certification processes used to certify the MAX. The issues we identified revolve around 3 basic areas, and our safety recommendations are centered on them. First, the system safety assumptions used by Boeing for the MCAS and ultimately accepted by the FAA did not use realistic pilot recognition and corrective actions in response to uncommanded flight control incidents. Quite simply, the assumptions that Boeing used did not consider or account for the impact that multiple flight deck alerts or indications could have on pilots' responses to uncommanded MCAS activation. Next, we identified the need for manufacturers to validate their pilot response assumptions using scientific methods and application of human factors principles to improve cockpit design, procedures, and training. We believe that the use of validated methods and tools to assess pilot performance in dealing with failure conditions and emergencies would result in more effective requirements for flight deck interface design, pilot procedures, and training strategies. And finally, we believe that manufacturers should develop and incorporate in airline cockpits mechanisms that would allow pilots to better diagnose, prioritize, and react to multiple alerts and alarms. The pilots in the Lion Air and Ethiopian crashes were faced with multiple oral and visual alerts. Research demonstrates that emergency situations would increase workload and require additional effort to manage effectively because of the stress involved and possible confusion regarding which actions are necessary to resolve the problem. Each of our 7 recommendations are detailed in my written testimony. In closing, it should be noted that the NTSB investigators continue to examine the design certification process, and we may issue additional recommendations in this area if warranted. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sumwalt. Mr. Hart, you recommend.
Thank you, Chairman Wicker and Ranking Member Cantwell and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me to this
So
hearing
there's
today.
one right here.
First, I would like to extend my condolences, joining others who have already done so, to the families and friends of the passengers and crew on Lion Air Flight 610 and Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. The FAA created the Joint Authority Technical Review because these crashes revealed a need to review the robustness of the aircraft certification process. The JATR, which included representatives from the FAA, NASA, and 9 other civil aviation authorities, was created to review the MAX certification process, determine whether the appropriate regulations were applied, to assess whether compliance was shown, and to recommend improvements. I commend the FAA for seeking this certification process peer review and for making it public. MAX grounding was unprecedented. 2 previous groundings were the McDonnell Douglas DC-10 in 1979, when an engine separated from the wing, and the Boeing 787 in 2013 due to battery fires. In those 2 groundings, the airplanes were rendered unairworthy. Because the airplanes were unairworthy, pilot competence was not an issue. Because those groundings resulted solely from airplane problems, the country where the airplanes were manufactured made the grounding and ungrounding decisions. The grounding of the MAX, on the other hand, involves automation that usually worked, but sometimes failed. And when it failed, some pilots knew how to respond, but some, including those who crashed, did not. Because the scenario was not just an airplane problem, but a problem of airplane system/pilot interaction, every country that licenses pilots must also be involved in the grounding and ungrounding decisions. As automation complexity increases, I anticipate that future problems are more likely to be of the airplane pilot type rather than airplane only. After 3 JATR meetings in Seattle in which Boeing and the FAA were very open and helpful, and extensive work between the meetings, the JATR gave the FAA a compilation of team members' recommendations in 12 areas. We did that on October the 11th. Some of the recommendations derived from the need for the certification process to address how a single system failure may create issues in other systems. Other recommendations raise the issue of whether a process that has been based largely upon compliance should also address
Oh my god, that's
safety.
actually right.
As systems become more complex, the likelihood increases that compliance with applicable regulations will not necessarily ensure safety. Moreover, as systems become more complex, the certification process should ensure that fail-safe design principles prioritize the mitigation of hazards through design, minimizing reliance on pilot action as primary means of risk mitigation. Delegation will probably become more prevalent as regulators encounter increasing difficulty hiring and retaining technology leaders. Thus, although the recommendations do not address the desirability of delegation, they do recommend examining how to make the ODA process less cumbersome to avoid stifling communications. Query, for example, whether inadequate communications resulted in the failure to address the effects of evolving the maneuvering characteristic augmentation system, MCAS, from a benign system to a more aggressive system. And query whether inadequate communications resulted in the failure to address the effects of modifying MCAS from one scenario to another scenario. Other recommendations relate to the FAA standards regarding the time for pilots to identify and respond to problems. JATR members recommend reviewing whether existing standards are appropriate for today's complex systems. For example, when a system failure results in cascading failures and multiple alarms, query how adequately the certification process considers the impact of multiple alarms along with possible startle effect on the ability of pilots to respond appropriately. These 2 crashes are the latest of several recent crashes in which pilots encountered scenarios that they had never seen before, even in training, and responded inappropriately. Increasing complexity and reliability exacerbate the challenge of training pilots to respond to problems that they have never seen before. Increasing complexity exacerbates the challenge because it reduces the likelihood that pilots understand the system. Increasing reliability exacerbates the challenge because it increases the difficulty of determining what types of problems might occur and therefore including those types of problems in training. In conclusion, the JATR members hope that their recommendations will continue improving aviation safety by helping to improve the certification process. Thank you again for inviting me, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Smack me on the brain.
Is the work complete regarding the MAX for either of your organizations?
There's stuff there, but I can't see.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that question. We are continuing to go through scores and scores of design certification documents, and we are looking if we need to make additional recommendations. We certainly will. So to answer your question, our work is not completed.
And Mr. Hart?
Our work is completed because we were chartered to review the situation and give recommendations to the FAA. We did that on October 11th. That completed our work. Thank you for asking.
So this particular JATR, Joint Authorities Technical Review, is over and disbanded.
That's correct.
All right.
All right.
Let's talk about the time between the first crash and the second crash. It was evident,
Glitching textures.
pretty clear after the first one, after the Lion crash, that the MCAS system was not working correctly. Is that true, Mr. Summerall?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And Mr. Hart, this was there are many factors, but the dysfunction of the MCAS was central.
That's correct.
Okay. And at that point, what notice was sent out to other airlines and to the pilots to make it clear that was the main problem?
Mr. Chairman, as you are aware, today is the one-year anniversary of Lion Air. So on October the 29th was the crash. I believe it was November the 7th when the FAA put out an airworthiness directive to require certain procedural modifications.
Was that a typical airworthiness directive, or was it highlighted as an emergency airworthiness directive?
I'm not sure, Chris, do you know?
Airworthiness directives, pretty much by definition, are considered emergency. So I think this one was definitely one that is supposed to command the attention of the entire industry.
Okay, so it and Mr. Sumwalt is consulting with staff, and it's fine if he supplements that. But this was a red flag sent out about the MAX and the MCAS part of it. Is that correct? Would you either of you gentlemen quarrel that this was a red flag?
Yeah.
It was an industry-wide warning that everybody who flies this airplane needs to know about this issue. So that, to that extent, yes.
Okay. Well, is there a way that we could have made it more explicit? Was there something about this advisory that didn't get the job done, Mr. Hart?
I'm sorry, but I can't speak for the FAA and their decision process on how to handle this. The decision process to have the airworthiness directives within days of the second crash was intentional to get the word out as quickly as possible. But I was not privy to the decision-making process.
I'm talking about the way it would typically have been received internationally around in the aviation industry. This would have been taken seriously and given a heightened bit of attention. Is that correct?
I hate this part.
That certainly is the purpose of an airworthiness directive. Yes, how people responded to it, don't have a good answer to that.
Okay. Now, did I hear you say, Mr. Hart, that some pilots reacted in one way which was sufficient, and some pilots did not, for whatever reasons, do that? If you could elaborate on what you were telling the committee.
Yes, thank you for that question. I was referring specifically to the fact that in the Lion Air crash, the day before that crash, that same problem was encountered and the pilots responded to it
I
appropriately.
don't even care. Who gives a shit?
Well,
Nothing matters anyway.
do you think there was a failure at Lion Air to notify the other crews that a problem had occurred? It was resolved in this fashion, and we need to be mindful of that. Do you know if that was communicated in the flight that did land safely?
Unfortunately, I do. Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I do not know the details of who told what to whom, whether it was the mechanics, the other pilots. I don't know the details of how that information about what happened the day before was transmitted to the subsequent pilots and the subsequent mechanics.
Mr. Sumwalt, do you want to clarify anything that you've said based on some advice that you've been getting?
Well, in fact, it was an emergency airworthiness directive that was issued by the FAA, as Mr. Hart has indicated.
So that is a term of art, an emergency airworthiness directive.
That's correct, and that means that it does not allow for public comment. Oftentimes, for normal airworthiness directive, the FAA has to put it out for public comment unless it's an emergency airworthiness directive.
Is it fair for me to characterize that as a red flag?
Well, as Chris Hart indicated, it does indicate that there was something that needed immediate awareness within the aviation community.
That's interesting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the second panel for being here. I wish there was many people listening to this panel as the first, because this is the hard work that we have to do in getting this right and moving forward. And I so much appreciate Mr. Sumwalt, the NTSB's recommendations, and Mr. Hart, your committee's recommendations. My colleagues and I, Senator Duckworth, Senator Blumenthal, have already introduced legislation on the NTSB and other recommendations last week, and hopefully we will be able to move forward on those. You heard the discussion on, I believe we're here for this issue about what happened in the cockpit and the level of distraction, which I think is the point, Mr. Sumwalt, of at least two of the recommendations that we put in our legislation. That is your recommendation that the FAA direct Boeing to have clearer corrective actions from uncomanned systems, and that there be this some sort of resolution that they've had in other planes to the cockpit situation, so that we're not bombarding pilots. Also, that they develop the same kind of assessment. Now, when I read the circulars, and I've read many, it's pretty clear to me that this already should have been done. It's pretty clear that you have to talk about the effectiveness. So when you submit a plan for a plane,
There's only
you have
one
to
left.
submit
I've
this
missed one
alert
already.
plan. So we'll see. We'll find out at
Missed
some
it
point
again.
what alert plan was submitted and what was reviewed. But it's very clear that you have to have, this effectiveness intended
Missed
for
it again.
human-machine integration, people understanding the alerts, compatibility with other displays and warnings,
Yeah.
ensuring that the system, is telling the pilots what to do. So, listen, I appreciate your recommendations, and we are going to get them into law, trust me. The question becomes, what are we doing on top of something that isn't already clear here? What is it that actually we're doing and helping people understand? What is it we're doing here to make this system safer? And the reason I ask this is because, as I said in my opening statement, I actually believe this is the issue du jour. I think it is for automobile safety moving forward on more AVs and on airplanes. There's going to be more integration into the cockpit. So anytime you are taking over command of that plane with a response,
Missed one or something.
we need to know and we need to understand that functionality. So what are these alert system requirements that we're asking the FAA to do both for the MAX and for all planes? What is that really giving us that we don't currently have now in the statute?
Well, thank you for the question, Senator Cantwell, and thank you for your leadership and your advocacy. on this area. Of course, we issued these 7 recommendations a month ago because we did identify holes in the design certification process. I'd be glad to get into some of those holes and what those recommendations are, but I don't want to dominate your time. I defer to you.
Yeah, I'm a useless man.
Well, my question was, why do you think this is important? Because you actually don't think that the details are there?
That's correct, and we really, the long and the short of it, woven throughout each of the 7 recommendations, is that we found that when pilots are faced with multiple alerts, they're not performing or reacting in the way that Boeing thought that they would react when they developed their design.
Smell like Kaiser.
And what about safety management systems for aerospace manufacturers? What about that recommendation?
The NTSB has found the benefits of safety management systems in many modes of transportation, including aviation. We don't have specifically a recommendation for an SMS for the manufacturers. However, we do believe that when you're properly analyzing and assessing your risk, that is improving safety. So if I think personally, I think that would be a good idea for manufacturers to have a safety management system in place.
And what does that mean to most people who are trying to listen to this conversation post the one we just had? What does that actually mean that happens?
Yeah, I've missed
You know,
one.
I've always looked at safety management systems, and I like the term safety management instead of safety management systems because it's an active thing. We want to manage safety the way that we would manage other vital business functions.
I've
So
missed
they're
it already.
generally thought to be about 4 tenets of SMS, one of which is safety risk assessment, where you're actively assessing your risk and managing those risks to an acceptable level. And so that's a key component right there of the safety management system.
Well, this issue of risk management is critical, and that's what I believe, is that you have to say what are the highest risks so you can focus on them. It was clear no one thought this change and new system that took outside information, controlled the plane, gave it different commands with different alerts that do different things. It wasn't tested, so we have to implement this. The FAA was given this directive or nudge before, but then they pulled back on a rulemaking in 2015
can't do it.
on this system management. But you believe ICAO, others are recommending this is what we should go forward with because it creates this robust discussion constantly. Is that the right way to describe it?
As a safety practitioner, I agree with that. And I do want to say again, the NTSB has not really gone on the record to have a recommendation for that. But from a safety practitioner's perspective, again, when you're managing your risk, you're managing safety.
Thank you. Thank you. I see my time has passed, so Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Cantwell, and I want to express my appreciation to Senator Cantwell and Senator Duckworth for the legislation that we're working on together and additional legislation that we hope will be based on your reports and others. You know, I had a lot of questions for our previous witness, which unfortunately I didn't have time to ask. One of them would have been, why did he call the President of the United States? In effect, circumventing the FAA if they were really going to respect safety. Are either of you aware of the call or calls that were made by Mr. Muilenburg to the President of the United States seeking to prevent grounding of these airplanes in the immediate aftermath of the second crash?
Senator Blumenthal, I'm certainly not aware of that. I sat in this hearing in March when you asked Mr. Elwell the same questions. I'm not aware of that. We were not involved in the decision to ground the aircraft in any form or fashion.
Mark?
It was not within the purview of the JATR either. We were looking at the certification process to decide how to make it better.
The fact of the matter is that the United States of America was among the last nations to ground those airplanes, correct?
That's certainly my understanding, us in Canada.
And normally, the United States of America would be at the forefront of safety, correct? Mr. Hart?
Good question, Senator. Just for your awareness, I am on record through an op-ed in USA Today to congratulate the FAA for waiting until they had enough data to see, is this a one-off event? Because if it was a one-off event, they're going to be grounding airplanes after every crash, or was it more than a one-off? In other words, where it's a
In retrospect, it was a good decision to ground that airplane.
after they had enough data to see the similarity of the two, yeah.
But the United States was the last to have enough data, for whatever the reason. Just saying. Right?
Well, everybody had the same data at about the same time. I just think the FAA has a reputation for waiting until the data to react.
Let me ask you, your report found that, quote, key aspects of the MCAS function, such as the intended function description, its interfaces and architecture, were not directly visible to the FAA in a straightforward manner through the certification deliverable document. I'm trying to put that in simple English that you would use in a USA Today article. They didn't do full, fair disclosure to the FAA, correct?
In simple language, the process, the SUE process was complicated enough and challenging enough and bureaucratic enough that the communication was stifled, and so the communication didn't get where it needed to be when it needed to be there.
Okay. I think that answers my question. And that was something you should correct, correct?
That's something that the JATR has recommended correcting, and yes, it does need correcting.
The Wall Street Journal recently reported that internal Boeing surveys revealed that about 30% of its employees felt potential undue pressure from managers regarding safety-related approval. In fact, one of the Boeing engineers, Curtis Eubank, filed a complaint that asserted, quote, Boeing management was more concerned with cost and schedule than safety or quality, end quote. Did your investigative work indicate that kind of undue pressure from Boeing on its employees to move the safety process at the expense of, move the certification process at the expense of safety?
Thank you for your question. Our investigation, our review found enough concern about undue influence that we recommended that it be reviewed carefully for the next certification process.
Indicate, I think, in your testimony that you thought delegation would continue, which seems contrary to what we have found here so far. The
fucking
lot of the thrust of the question has been to reverse delegation. So I hope that maybe you can have your further thoughts on that issue. Let me just ask one more question of Mr. Sumwalt. On Sunday, just this past Sunday, the New York Times reported on Boeing efforts to undercut regulatory oversight early and often. The story of Boeing sabotaging rigorous safety scrutiny is chilling
fucking keys
for all of us, and more reason to keep the 737 MAX grounded until certification is really and truly independent and the system is reformed. What are your views on the amount of delegation authority from the FAA to Boeing? Shouldn't we reverse the delegation that exists right now?
Senator Blumenthal, thank you for that question. The NTSB's role in all of this is to serve as an accredited representative to each of the respective accident investigations. As such, we looked at the design certification processes of the 737 MAX, and we issued these 7 recommendations. We have not looked at the ODA process. That is not something that we have done.
Why?
Well, because there are approximately 79 organizations that have ODA approval. We've got about 2 people that have the expertise to dwell into the design certification issues. We've devoted those energies to come up with these 7 recommendations that we issued 1 month ago. That is an enormous task. I'm under the impression that the U.S. DOTIG is doing a study of this issue.
As are numerous other entities. Thank you, Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Sumwalt, welcome. At the March 2019 hearing held by this committee's Aviation Subcommittee, Chairman Wicker asked you a simple question concerning Lion Air Flight 610, and I quote, what should the pilots have done? And you responded as follows, and I quote, "Well, I flew the 737 for 10 years, and I do believe that there is a procedure, at least for the Flintstone version of the 737 that I flew, a very old 737, but I do believe that the very first thing you would do is oppose that motion by pulling the yoke back, and that would engage the stab brake or the stabilator cutout function. And to me, this answer makes sense. The most reliable initial human response to an uncommanded nose-down dive is to pull back on the yoke. Would you concur with this view?"
Yes, I do. I've actually looked at the procedure, and it says to grasp and to hold it firmly, but as you know, as an experienced pilot, your natural reaction would, in fact, if it's going in a direction you don't intend it to, you would tend to oppose it, which should, in the older models of the Boeing aircraft that I flew, the 727 and 737, that would engage the stabilizer brake and stop the stab from running. But as you pointed out in your earlier round, it will not do that when MCAS is active on the 737 MAX.
Right, so that's what I would like to add to your response, is the critical importance of the column cutout function, whether aft or forward, is that it's not just limited to the very old 737, but in fact, according to a former Boeing engineer who was responsible for the control law development in the 757, 767, and the 747-400, in every Boeing airplane, until the 737 MAX, uncommanded stabilizer runaway is stopped by column motion only. You don't have to do another step. Once you pull back and you've overridden it, that's it. There's nothing that resets and then pushes the nose back down 5 seconds later. There's nothing else you have to do. That is it in every other model of Boeing aircraft, of the 737s. But for the MAX, with the MCAS malfunction, the pilot has to also apply the manual electric trim within the same 3-second window. Otherwise, the MCAS, which the pilots did not know was installed in the aircraft, could reset and put the nose back down. So now you're telling pilots, okay, natural reaction, you've pulled back, you've overrode it, you think that's it. But now you have to troubleshoot for a system that you don't know exists that is now overriding your pilot's command input in pulling back the yoke. Mr. Sumwell, are you aware of Boeing notifying commercial 737 pilots before the Lion Air crash that when MCAS activates during manual flight, it disables the aft column cutout safety function? That is, it overrides that safety function?
Senator Duckworth, I'm under the impression that just as you said, that prior to these two tragic crashes, that information was not widely known within the piloting community.
Thank you. Mr. Sumwell, the MCAS malfunction hazard should have been elevated to a hazardous rating, in my opinion, because the aft column cutout was removed and worsened by tripling the stab trim rate, which made severe mistrim likely, especially with a persistent malfunction. Had Boeing done this, instead of rating it as a major hazard, we would not be where we are today. Would you agree with that?
How did I get up there?
It changes how they report to the FAA, am I correct?
Yes, that hazard category of major, as I understand it, only required there to be one angle of attack sensor. If it was at a higher hazard category, it would have required the input from 2.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I would like to enter Peter Lemmy's essay, Flawed Assumptions Pave a Path to Disaster, into the hearing record.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Mo, can you talk about the accident chain, the concept of these decisions that pile up and leads to those Lion Air pilots, for example, fighting to save that aircraft? And how these decisions add up?
Yes, we, as you know, Senator Duckworth, the NTSB was an accredited representative to the Lion Air investigation, as well as the Ethiopian accident investigation. We participated closely with both of them, but since the Lion Air is wrapped up, we have worked closely with the Indonesian authorities. We commented on their report. We feel that their report, the Indonesian report, the KNKT report, is comprehensive, and we're satisfied with that report. So I think that report outlines the chain of events. It's not just one factor. There were several issues that led to that crash.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Sumwalt, the NTSB report that you mentioned in your testimony stated that the NTSB is, quote, concerned that the accident pilot responses to the unintended MCAS operation were not consistent with the underlying assumptions about pilot recognition and response that Boeing used based on FAA guidance for flight control system functional hazard assessments, including for MCAS as part of the 737 MAX design. Why do you think it was that Boeing made the wrong assumptions?
Senator Cruz, thank you for that question. And what we do know is that to simulate the MCAS, or to assess the level of hazard, the level of risk associated with that, they put Boeing pilots, test pilots, in the engineering simulator, and while they were flying, all of a sudden the trim started moving. They wanted to see how a pilot would have reacted. And if they reacted the way that Boeing expected them to do, then they said, okay, well, a pilot will immediately recognize this problem. They'll notice because the nose is starting to pitch down. They'll notice because it's increased pressure on the control wheel, and one other thing. And the stab trim wheel was moving. That's all correct. But what Boeing failed to account for in their assumptions was to consider that the MCAS could have failed because of another reason. The MCAS could have activated because of a failure of the angle of attack, which would have led to numerous other alerts and warnings in the cockpit. So with the failed angle of attack, they would have had a low airspeed indication on their primary flight display. They would have gotten a stick shaker or a stall warning, which is rattling the stick and making a lot of noise. They would have gotten an aural warning that says airspeed low, airspeed low. They would have had various lights in the cockpit. So in the long and the short of it is that Boeing only evaluated pilots' performance with the stab trim itself moving. They did not simulate or replicate how multiple failures could affect a pilot's performance.
And why did the FAA processes not catch these failed assumptions?
Well, that's a great question, Senator, and I'm not sure that I know the answer to that, but that's why we've issued these 7 recommendations, is so that these design assumptions can be more realistic. We found in 3 instances, in the 2 accident flights, plus the Lion Air flight prior to the accident flight, we've seen 3 cases where the pilots did not perform in accordance with the assumptions that Boeing used.
And is a bird strike a scenario that engineers designing a plane should anticipate and that regulators focusing on a plane should anticipate?
I believe so, and I believe they do in certain areas. I'm not sure how it might apply to this. As you know, there's conjecture that perhaps a bird might have taken out the AOA sensor on the Ethiopian aircraft. I don't know if that's part of the total risk assessment for the 737 MAX as it relates to MCAS.
Is there any indication either Boeing or the FAA considered the possibility that a bird strike would shear off the angle of attack sensor?
I do not know, but I can certainly look into that and get back with you if you like.
I would appreciate that very much. Mr. Hart, one of the key findings of the Joint Technical Review Committee report is that the FAA's visibility into important system safety information was, quote, incomplete and fragmented. The JATR then went on to say if the FAA had been more involved in the certification of the MCAS, this, quote, would likely have resulted in design changes that would have improved safety.
Doesn't even let me
Based on the
save
JATR's findings, why would the FAA accept incomplete and fragmented safety information from Boeing, and what can be done to fix that?
Thank you for the question. That's the purpose of the recommendation that the communication process, that the ODA be less bureaucratic and less complicated, so the communication process isn't undermined by the complexity of that situation. So the FAA was not adequately aware of the evolution of the MCAS from a relatively weak system to a much more robust system. The FAA wasn't aware of the details of how adequately the transformation of the MCAS from a high-speed wind-up turn direction to a low-speed angle of attack correction, and were the assumptions properly considered in that process, the FAA, the communications to the FAA were not adequate for it to be fully aware of the impact of those issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Senator Blumenthal.
I have just one question, and you may consider it outside of your expertise, but the CEO of Boeing told us today that they made mistakes and regretted them and wanted to take action in response to do the right thing for the families who were affected, the loved ones of victims. Boeing has said that it will take responsibility specifically for the Lion air crash, resulting in the deaths of 189 people in Indonesia last year, and the Ethiopian Airlines crash that killed 157 people. But it has filed court documents for the Lions air crash indicating that it will move to change the venue of the case to Indonesia, where the plane was maintained, if settlement talks fail. The case was filed in the Northern District of Illinois, where Boeing is headquartered, as you know. Resolving these claims in Indonesia seems a lot less likely to provide justice to those families. There's no Seventh Amendment right to a jury trial there. There's no requirement of discovery. There's no rule allowing for depositions. Would you agree with me that equity, fairness, justice would argue in favor of keeping these cases in the United States?
My friend Chris Hart is a Harvard-educated lawyer.
He's a Harvard Law School graduate and
Exactly.
a practicing lawyer, in addition to being a pilot. So if you want to defer to him, that's fine.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the question. I am a Harvard attorney, so to speak, but I'm not, I don't know anything about the litigation strategy to be able to comment on what they want to do litigation-wise. That's way outside of my lane. The JATR did not consider it, and I'm not really, I don't consider myself competent to speak to that issue.
Well, in general, wouldn't you consider the courts of the United States to be a better place to do justice for American families than the courts of Indonesia?
I'm not enough of, I thank you for the question, but I'm not enough of a litigator to be able to give you a competent answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. We're going to close this hearing now.
That's one more thing.
Sure,
Quickly,
Senator Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for a second round. I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Hart, I think I heard earlier from the testimony from the company that they actually do think that the FAA knew about the level of trim. I think this is going to be a big issue. I think we're going to hear a lot more about this, but you would hope that a plan at the very beginning of certification would include that data, then they would make decisions. But I am concerned that the level of automation and technology in human response, I want to see the best engineers. I think it's, when the automobile industry and Toyota went through this, we didn't know what happened. We basically called NASA and said, would you look at this code and figure out what happened? Okay, I don't want to call NASA to look at software code. I want the FAA to be the best technology engineers in understanding problems with software, problems with automation, and challenges with human response. That's why part of our legislation is that Center of Excellence for the FAA. Just by the way, I've done 2 other Center of Excellences, one on composite manufacturing because the FAA didn't know enough about composites to know how to certify the plane, and one on biofuels for jets because they also don't know how to certify fuel sources for planes if they don't understand jet fuel themselves. Okay, so I'm a believer that we give the FAA the extra resources and tools so they can stay ahead, or at least be the right parameters of debate. But isn't the right parameter of debate have to focus on this human technology interface today? Isn't that where we are? Because we saw those 10 years of making us safer, and yet this level of integration is also so low that 5 of the last accidents were all around this. And I think you know, for me and many Americans are waking up wondering what is a pitot tube and a, you know, AOA sensor on the outside of the plane giving commands and responses to inside the cockpit without the pilots understanding. So I just feel that the FAA, and we've had this discussion with Captain Sullenberger, needs to understand human response to these automation systems. What do you say about that recommendation of a center of excellence, Mr. Hart or Mr. Summerall?
Thank you for the question. It also gives me an opportunity to respond to Senator Blumenthal's raising the same issue, and that is, I think that as,
Wow, nice.
first of all, the type of problem we're going to see with airplane safety in the future, in my view, is going to not be things falling off the airplane like the DC-10 engine. It's going to be the pilot-airplane interaction issue. So the human factors piece is crucial, and that's why I'm totally on board with the human factors recommendations that the NTSB made. There are two problems. One is the reference was to multiple things going wrong at the same time. I would add to that, it's not just multiple things going wrong, it's also never having seen it before, even in training. That's really the challenge, is when they are seeing this for the first time in real time of the series of accidents where this has happened and it's been unsuccessful. The one exception to that was Sully, when he had a situation that he had never seen before, even in training, and he handled it masterfully.
Well,
So
listen, I think I've consulted him a lot about this, but that is why he came to us after the Colgan Air and said, do not change the regulations on the co-pilot for regional aircraft because you don't have enough time. You don't have enough time to talk. So I think if you're going to develop a system for certification and give it to the FAA, I think the FAA has to know the parameters of human response and what pilots are capable of. We just need a lot more data. If this is the route we're going to keep going on innovation, then we just need to know a lot more about what is that factor. I think even, I don't want to speak for him, but I think his perception is that that's where you have to start, because you don't have any way to judge a system if you don't really understand what the human limitation is.
And that goes to my point that the leading technologists in these rapidly advancing and innovative technologies, the leading technologists are not going to be with the regulator. That's why this is not an FAA problem. This is an international certification problem, because the regulators are not able to hire and retain the leading technologists in these rapidly advancing technologies. They're going to be with the companies. That's why I say delegation.
But I want the FAA to have enough data, information, and understanding to ask the right questions. Because if they're not asking the right questions, because they don't understand the technological impact, we're going to have a problem. Okay, so we have to make sure they understand the R&D and at least the parameters, whether that is composites, biofuels, or cockpit automation.
And that's precisely why adequate information is so crucial.
Yes.
Straight to your point. Thank you for making that point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blumen.
Just one quick question. If the FAA were able to pay enough to offer career opportunities, would that affect your judgment that they can't hire the leading technologists, as you put it?
I can't speak to the totality of the circumstances why the regulators don't have those people, but that's probably part of it, yes.
Well, I'm just really discouraged and frankly somewhat skeptical about your view that the FAA should be sort of doomed to failure and has to outsource safety.
I don't mean to suggest they're doomed to failure. I'm suggesting that's why I think the collaborative process of the delegation will continue, because there's no way that, in my view, in the way that things are currently situated, the FAA is going to have the expertise within-house to do it without the collaboration.
Well, putting aside the word collaboration, I hope we can prove you wrong by, in fact, incentivizing, both financially and otherwise, people with those skills to go to work for the FAA, because that's where the disinterested and independent safety function belong. If you outsource safety, that is doomed to failure.
I certainly agree with you. That would be ideal. Yes, Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you.
That's what I do.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to the members of the committee who've participated throughout. I have to say this has been one of the most difficult hearings I've ever participated in. And I know it's been difficult for the family members who are still with us in the room. Some have had to leave. Let me reiterate what I said at the outset, and that is this committee, under my leadership and Senator Cantwell's leadership, is working to obtain as full an answer as possible. We owe it to the public, and we owe it to the families and to the victims. And you have my assurance that we are not finished with the work. That said, the hearing record will remain open for 2 weeks. During this time, senators are asked to submit any questions for the record. Upon receipt, all witnesses are requested to submit their written answers to the committee as soon as possible. I thank the witnesses for appearing today, and this hearing is now adjourned.
Damn, that was 3 hours long. That was crazy. We just said it was below, no it's not. I don't know, honestly. I can't bother. This is not living. This is existing. Oh, I missed it. Imagine wasting your life playing a video game that way. Oh, I got it all. Don't touch. Don't care anymore. Gold break. Oops. Alright. How do I destroy this? Oh. Where is this taking me? Just leading me nowhere. What? I've got no Lego bricks. This is so sad and pointless. Why am I playing this? I don't know what to do. I don't have all the parts or something. Now apparently I do. No, I don't. Where are the other parts? I don't know what to do. I tried laser beam, it didn't work. I haven't collected anything yet. I think it's bugged. Since I haven't collected any of it. What's the point? Cement on my neck. Yeah, it's completely broken. doesn't. I'm missing a piece. What? Can't even finish the game though. Oh well. Oh well. Oh, now there's so many more pieces. No. Where's that last piece? How's it missing? Broken. Oh man. Um. Yeah. I don't care about it. Say that to my face and not online. Yeah, you know when I do work for people and they don't pay me? Yeah, can you actually fucking pay me, you idiots? They're still being paid. People just make me do things and never pay me. It's so pointless. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm literally right now they messaged me, I'm not joking, and I completely forgot about it, and I'm too like broken to even do any work. I don't want to do anything, honestly. I can't be bothered. Just am done with life. They're like, can you come to this meeting? And I look like a dead raccoon, honestly. Like, look at me. I don't even know what to make anymore. Like, I've got no time for myself either. Like, I have to do music now. No one ever pays me for my work. What's the point? I never get paid. Spent 3 days doing a bloody music video, didn't get paid. Piece of... I'm going to take him to a small claims court. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. This singer asked me to do a music video for her. It took me 3 days. I sent it to her. I was like, can you pay me? She's like, yeah, I'll do it later. And then it's been 4 days, nothing. She made some excuse like, oh, I can't download it to watch it. Like, what the hell? You don't have space or something? What? You can't view it? Such a bullshit excuse. I've got no space to view it, so I can't pay you. When you literally viewed it, the revision before that you reviewed it. So I haven't got paid yet. I'm actually going to take it to court, small claims court, if she doesn't pay me. Because I sent her an invoice, and I have proof that she asked me to do it. So, you know, it's up to you. Just pay me and I won't do anything, because I'm not spending 3 days for no reason. I should have done that. I should have said pay me first, because I always never do that. Yeah. That's what I should have done. I'm such an idiot. Never give some work without, unless it's watermarked. Should have watermarked it. Put it as a hidden video. That's what I said to her, and she doesn't know, like... I sent an MP4, but it was like some different codec, and she said like, oh, I can't open it to play it. So I said download VLC media player, and she said, I can't open it. I said download VLC media player to view it. Because you've got like some old Mac that doesn't play anything. And then she said, oh, I've got no space left to view it on my laptop. And I was like, what does that have to do with anything? You viewed it before. You're able to download that one, but suddenly you can't do it. And I know her YouTube channel, so as soon as I see it up, I'll be like, alright, you're gonna pay me now? I'm gonna keep bothering her until she does. Because I'm sick of being exploited. Where they beg you to be all nice, and then when you do it, they just stop talking to you. Like, we agreed you pay me and you haven't done it. Yeah. Yeah, she uses, she's got like a MacBook, but she uses QuickTime Player. And then I was so shocked, I actually said like, what resolution do you want the music video in? And she didn't know what I was talking about. She was like, what's that? And I said, do you want it 1080 or 4K? And she was like, what does that mean? And I'm like, you're asking me to do a music video, but you don't even know the basics of how it works. Like, why are you bothering to ask me? How do you not know what it is when then you're asking me to do specific things for you? I was like, what do you want it, you know, what aspect ratio, what do you want in it? She didn't know. She didn't know what resolution was. I was like, okay, I'll just do it 4K then, I don't know. And then She was like, I can't open an MP4, and I just said, I told her like 3 times, I've given you a solution, why aren't you doing it? And she doesn't know what to do. I was like, why don't you just upload it to YouTube and view it privately? And she's like, nah. Okay. Oh my god. I don't know, man. What's 1080? What is 1080? And then I told her like I was adding a background video for one of the layers. So I can't edit anything in the video because it's a video, it's not like effects altogether. And she said, can you change the way it looks in the background, like how it moves? I said, it's a video, I can't change the contents of the video because it's a video. And then she was complaining to me, why is it taking so long to send? And I'm like, do you understand how rendering works? It takes an hour for me to render it because it's got like sparkles, 4K shit everywhere, chroma keying, motion blur. And she was like, can you send it? Can you send it? I'm like, it's fucking rendering. What do you want me to do? I don't have a supercomputer. It's rendering as fast as I can. What do you want me to do? I'm sitting here wasting 2 hours of my life because I can't use my PC while it's rendering for your stupid video, and you don't even pay me anyway. So I sent it like 1 in the morning, and she was like, yeah, I'll pay you when I go to bed. And now it's like 4 days later. I asked her, are you paying me yet? And she goes, no, because I haven't downloaded it yet. I was like, she saw like the almost final version. I just did some tweaks, and she still hasn't decided to pay me. Like, why? The video's crap. I'm not even bothering to show you. Yep. Don't worry. I'm gonna scare her into saying I'll sue her or something, because yeah, pretty much. I literally don't care. If she does not pay me soon, okay, I'll message her and saying, if you do not pay me, I will take this to a small claims court. So either pay me now, or I'll start the process, and you'll have to come, or whatever they have to do. Because I've provided an invoice, we've talked about it, we've discussed it, you've said you wanted me to do this job, and you have not paid me. So it's up to you. Just simple, I've given her the invoice twice, send her my details, just pay me, and it'll be all good. I'm actually going nuts. It's just a background with text, it's not even anything. Oh yeah, and then she had the audacity, like, I said, have you paid me yet? And then she goes, no, I haven't downloaded it. Also, can you make some tweaks to the beginning and change the way the background looks? It's a bit blurry. I'm like, you just don't care, do you? So you want me to do more work and you're not paying me? What a joke. Absolute joke. It's not even that much. Like, I charged 10 times the amount I charged her. I just did it because I was like, yeah, whatever. It'll take a day or two, but still, pay me. Yeah, literally, I haven't watched it, but can you change the background blur? Like, what are you on about? I'll read the chat. It's a joke. Here we go. Let's see what it says. Okay, I sent her a WeTransfer link for like the video to download. You know, like file transfer. I said, here is the invoice, and I've attached the video. And she said, I can't open the things you sent over WeTransfer. So I said, why not? It's a video. Download VLC media player and it will work. We'll just upload it to YouTube private and you can view it. And it just said, it's basically a MP4 and I can't open it. And then I said, download VLC media player again. And she said, okay, well that might be a few days till I get space. And I was like, it's 1 megabyte, it's tiny. She goes, well my disk is full. I deleted lots but not working. And then I will try later, and then 3 days later I'm like, hey, did you transfer the money yet? And she goes, no I didn't, since I couldn't download it yet either. Also, can you do the changes to the intro, writing down the name? Also, in the song, the glitter effect looks a bit funny on the left side. And I said, and she said, maybe you can go over that and see if you can make it less blurred. And then she said, oh, yeah, I need to download it first. What the fuck? I'm done. She's using like some old MacBook Mini or whatever it's called, like 2009. It's got like 60 gig hard drive. Doesn't even know what MP4 is. I'm stunned that she doesn't know what it is. Like literally everyone on YouTube says the resolution. How do you not know what it is? You see it everywhere. It's on YouTube. It's on like, you've got videos you rendered. How do you not know what it is? And then you complain like 5 times after I've done it wrong, where you don't even know what settings you wanted. So when I just guess, you're like, oh, I don't know, that's wrong. I can't even talk for 5 seconds before I'm out of breath, so. Absolute scum. Oh yeah, and then the funniest thing is, literally, I don't understand people like this, like, when I started the video, I went to where she was to like do it with her, so, you know, it's easier to edit together. So I text him like, I'm outside, and then 30 minutes later, no reply. So I just walk off and go and get like lunch. And then she replied like, oh sorry, you didn't knock. And I was like, there's no front door, it's like a apartment thing. Like there's no bell to ring the specific flat. So knocking wouldn't do anything. So then she was like, where did you go? Can you come back? And I said, okay. So I get there and I'm like, I'm outside again. And then she does it again. She doesn't answer for like 30 minutes. So I'm standing there for like an hour total, like, can you open the door? My god, like, what the hell? She's like, I didn't hear the door. Even though we agreed to the time we'd meet, like, how do you just not, how do you forget that? I said, let's meet at 3 o'clock, and 3:30 I'm still standing outside in some dodgy alley gonna get marked by some gang. There's like gangs all around, it's like middle of bloody Tottenham or something. Yeah. Probably. Oh, but she has money to pay £500 to record her music at some studio. She's got money for that. But when it's me, she's too busy to pay me. Oh yeah, let's go on her Insta. Oh yeah, she's posted like 50 stories today. It's not like you're busy. It takes 5 seconds to bloody transfer money. She's, what the fuck? She's literally got a thumbnail for one of her posts is the video. Does that mean she's used it? fuck? Joke. Yeah. Chest. Yeah, I'm legit. I can't talk. I think I'm so unhealthy. I can't just talk for like 5 seconds before I'm out of breath. Or I've got like some lung problem. I don't know. Probably dying. I don't know. Yeah. So what's your favourite song off the album? Comment below. One day ago. My favourite song is I've sent you an invoice, can you pay me? You know, anyone else, like a studio or anyone, you would pay them instantly. I just don't understand people who don't pay on time, who give you excuses. Like, if someone asked me to pay them for something, I would right there open the phone, open my banking app, send it in 10 seconds or less than a minute, because it's the right thing to do, because you did work for them. No, sorry, they did work for you, so you pay them for that work. But these people would just go like 5 days, 6 days, no payment, and they're like, oh, I forgot, or some crap. Yeah. What was I saying? I can't even remember. No, it wasn't that. It was just I was listening to the thing, but it's still, you know, yeah, it's a joke. That's why being a freelancer is a pain, because not only do people do this, but you get companies doing this. The amount of times I've had to like beg a company to pay me, it's like, I've been there for a month, can you, I don't know, maybe pay me, or what, I'm just here for free? Should I just do some work for free another month? Yeah. So if I don't get paid for this, then I'm taking her to a small claims court to get what I rightly own. And this other job, that film score, we're going to put it in writing what I'm getting paid, and I want it monthly or something. I'm not doing months of work and then they just don't pay you. So yeah, pretty much that's how it goes. Yeah, I'm suffering every day. My IBS is gonna destroy me. I think my body's shutting down anyway now, so I'm gonna go. Life. What time is it? It's 4 in the morning. Yeah, I'm surprised if, I'll survive anytime soon. Like, my organs have gone. My lungs don't work. My liver, stomach is completely destroyed. Metabolism is broken. Ears are messed up. What happened? Oh yeah, when I was a baby, I nearly died or something from like some, I don't know what happened. Like, I was like shivering or something. And he stuck me on a ventilator or something, and I nearly died. Apparently. I think they had to. What did they have to do? They had to like. They had to drain my lungs out or something because I was dying. Anyway.